The night I tuned the wrong key. I make a living bending metal until it behaves like a secret. People call me a piano tuner like I'm a man with a delicate wrench and a good ear. I am, but that's just the visible part. Mostly I'm an interpreter of tension. A piano is a city of strings wound tight enough to launch an arrow. One quarter turn too far and a note goes from honest to hysterical. One quarter turn less and it's all apology. I travel between those edges with a lever, a felt strip, and patience I earned the hard way. My name is Elliot. I work out of a canvas bag and a spiral notebook that smells faintly of linseed and coffee. The list of clients is long and odd. Old churches with cracked stained glass, private schools that treat their instruments like well-funded pets, penthouses where a glossy grand is more confession booth than furniture. The one that paid best, until all of this, was the Meridian, a downtown hotel that wants you to think it invented discretion. The ballroom kept two concert grands on a rotating stage, polarized glass, and lighting gentle enough to make a banker look like a poet. My wife Leela is the Meridian's event director. She can lay a floor plan the way a composer lays a score, packing, pause, crescendo. She puts people where they'll be grateful they showed up and art where it will feel overheard. We're good together because we both understand the choreography of attention. She sets the scene. I make sure it hums. We met 3 years ago in that ballroom. The pianist hired to play a charity gala insisted the C above middle had a nasal attitude. I crawled over the harp in my socks, listening for the string that wanted to be believed. Leela leaned over the rim while I worked, her hair pinned up like a dare. "Do you ever leave a note slightly wrong on purpose?" she asked. "Only if the room is too perfect to be trusted," I said. She laughed the way a good note breaks, clean, quick, leaving warmth behind. We were married a year later in a courthouse with paint that wanted to be repainted. Afterward, we ate sandwiches on a church staircase, our ankles touching, the architect of our future somewhere inside us sketching a plan we could almost read. The first wrong note in our marriage arrived soft enough to pretend it was nothing. It was a Tuesday evening in early spring, the air making promises it had no intention of keeping. I just retuned a school upright that had survived a winter recital of fifth-grade fury. Leela texted, "Late night, final walkthrough for the Philharmonic fundraiser. Don't wait up. Love you." The Philharmonic's summer fundraiser is the Meridian's favorite child, rich, photogenic, needy. Leela had been eating stress for breakfast over it for weeks. I believed the text the way you believe a person wincing from a new pair of shoes. Halfway. At home, I found a postcard on the kitchen counter, the kind hotels leave in rooms so you can mail your loneliness to others. Someone had doodled on the skyline, a little treble clef above the tallest building. On the back, in handwriting that thought it was charming, a sentence, "All good instruments need to be played hard now and then, S." I told myself it was a donor being a donor. The Meridian collects donors the way cats collect warm places to sit. Still, when Leela came in close to midnight, hair loose, cheeks lit, I listened to her greeting the way I listen to a chord I don't trust. She kissed me and tilted her head against my jaw like that spot was home, which it is. A scent drifted over her that wasn't ours. Not his cologne, not anything so obvious. It was the sharp, clean air of the Meridian stairwells, where the building breathes without witnesses. "Walk through go long?" I asked. "Cellists," she said, rolling her eyes. "They want chairs that apologize." She smiled, and if I hadn't known her so well, I would have believed it was about chairs. I carried the postcard to my workbench in the spare room and slid it under the felt strips, where things wait until you're ready to be honest. The second wrong note came 2 days later. The Meridian's technician called. One of the grands in the ballroom had gone sour on the top octave. I arrived to find the room set for a tasting dinner, white tablecloths catching light like sails. A man at the bar with silver in his beard and a scarf knotted like a shrug watched me walk past. He had the posture of someone who never learned to apologize for getting what he wanted. At the piano, I tuned the angry E into submission and then ran through the scale slowly, ear pressed to the board so I could hear the building answer back. You can tell if a room likes you by the way it gives your notes back. The meridian and I go steady. It knows my hands. When I finished, I looked up. Leela stood at the far door with the scarfed man, heads close, voices down. She touched his forearm the way you touch a piano's lid, absent-minded, proprietary, uncalculated. He laughed with his mouth closed, like the joke was expensive. I put my tools away with the ceremony you reserve for breakable truths. On my way out, she intercepted me near the service hall. "Hey, maestro," she said, using the nickname the kitchen staff gave me. "Savior of sour ease, you're a gem." "Always happy to convince a diva string it isn't the center of the universe," I said. She smiled, but it didn't reach the place where we recognize each other. "We good for Saturday?" she asked. "For the gala, yeah, I'll do a touch-up that morning." I held her gaze. "Who's S?" She blinked. "What?" "The man who thinks instruments like being played hard." Her eyes flicked left, a trained reflex reading the door, reading the world. "Donors send stupid notes," she said. "Occupational hazard." "I thought so," I said. The words were right, the harmony was. On Saturday I brought my lever and my best face. The gala is a machine of kindness and vanity, and Leela is its engineer. By 6, the ballroom sang. The stage wore flowers like a crown. The conductor, the man with the scarf, was everywhere at once, accepting praise the way some men accept oxygen, unthinkingly and with abandon. He is famous enough to be Google, but not famous enough to be immune to hotel lighting. I tuned the pianos on stage while servers set forks like choreography. Leela was motion and correction, headset tilted, voice smooth. She brushed my shoulder as she passed. For a second, the night remembered who we were. Then the moment moved on. At 8, the program began. Donors assembled their attention. The conductor took the mic, told a funny story about a broken baton, and announced that before the full orchestra joined us, the evening would open with an intimate duet. List for 4 hands, arranged for 2 pianos. He invited a visiting pianist on stage. Then, like it was an aside, like it was nothing, he invited Leela to turn pages for him. My wife turned pages for the man who signed his notes with a single letter. It's not betrayal, page turning, it's service. It's proximity. But proximity is a solvent. It loosens things that have been tight for years. They played. The sound was a little reckless, a little drunk on itself, like it was proud to be music in a room that mostly staged the idea of it. Leela stood between them, one hand poised, eyes on the score, hip nearly brushing the conductor's thigh each time she leaned. I watched the way he glanced up, not to cue a turn but to taste her profile. I watched the way she pretended not to know. When the piece finished, the room applauded as if it had been waiting to applaud its whole life. The conductor lifted Leela's hand and kissed the air above her knuckles. It was a gesture for donors. It was also a sin if you care about words like that. I am not the man who throws a drink or makes a scene. I have a more fatal talent. I am very, very good at making the truth audible. The second set needed the Steinway alone. The backup Yamaha rolled backstage to a dim wing where extra chairs go to gossip. I told the stagehands I'd do a quick check on the Steinway's upper register after the speeches and slipped into the shadows. Instead, I detoured toward the service stair. The Meridian stairs are concrete, painted a hopeful gray, smelling of lemon and hotel secrets. I've tuned in that stairwell on late nights when the ballroom is sleeping and the electricians need a place to drop the hum from their teeth. It's where people go to take calls they don't want their dates to overhear. It's where I found them. They weren't touching. They didn't have to be. He stood a step above her, which gave him the advantage of height and gave her the angle that made her neck longer than my good sense. Their bodies had learned each other's outlines with a speed that made me furious. Not a shared life, just a shared temperature. After the Europe tour, he was saying, voice pitched to private, we could take the Amalfi week. I know a villa. I have a husband, she said, and the ache in her voice had my name on it. He can have the gallery, he said, and that told me everything I needed to know about him. I didn't break in. I didn't stand there trembling. I went back to the Yamaha and pulled the fallboard to the notch where it blocks the keys without locking, and I pressed 3 keys slowly. G, B, E, listening hard, then nudged each string a hair off itself, not out of tune, just enough to make the upper partials shimmer when played together. 3 notes that politely refused to be ignored. Back on stage, the conductor gave the downbeat to an aria excerpt the soprano devoured like it owed her money. Between numbers, he liked to talk. He told stories about genius being temperamental but worth the trouble. I watched Leela applaud in all the right places, arms folded under the score when she wasn't needed, headset resting like an afterthought at her neck. Then he announced an improvisation. A little game, he said, grinning. 1 piano, 3 random notes will make something out of anything. He gestured toward the Yamaha off to the side, theatrically grabbing it back into the light with a stagehand's help. Pick a volunteer, he said, looking right at Lila with the benevolent cruelty of a man who knows the script and loves to ad-lib. Someone who knows the room. She approached without looking at me. He invited her to hit any 3 keys. She sat at the Yamaha with her back to the audience and glanced at the conductor for permission he pretended not to give. She lifted her hands and, because she trusts my tunings like she trusts gravity, she pressed G, B, E. The chord rang like a truth told too close to the mic. Not wrong, not even ugly, just unsettled enough to make people look at each other and wonder if they were hearing what they were hearing. The conductor's smile tightened by a millimeter. He tried to launch his bit, to riff on coincidence and chaos. Each time he hit the chord, it flickered. A camera flash in a church. A wedding photo you can't pretend wasn't taken. He played through it like a pro. The audience laughed when they were told. They clapped on command. But a stain had appeared on the evening's tuxedo, and it knew. After the show, Leela found me by the cases, where I was refelting hammers I had already refelted an hour earlier, hands busy because heart not. What did you do? She asked, voice low, face composed in that way she wears for difficult donors and very old relatives. I tuned the Yamaha's 3s a breath apart, I said, just enough to make the air wonder if it was lying. She closed her eyes. I watched the moment land. That was cruel, she said. That was honest, I said. Cruel would have been a key change in the middle of your vows. We stood there in the backstage light that forgives everything but cheapness. She put a hand on the lid as if she needed the instrument to stand up without her. I didn't plan for any of this, she said. One day I was happy, and then a note in me wanted to move and wouldn't shut up. I know what that feels like, I said, and I meant it. Not about the conductor, about the part inside me that had stopped trusting my own house and had started listening to stairwells. She looked up, her eyes wiped clean of the little performances we do for each other when we're tired. Do you love me? She asked, not like a beg, more like a fact check. Yes, I said, because I did, in the way you love the first song you ever learned to hum. Do you love him? No, she said, and then, I love the woman who gets to stand next to him without translating herself. I don't know if that's love or relief. Relief is a kind of love. So is letting go before you rot. We didn't explode. We arranged. She spent the night at a friend. I tuned a church piano at 8 the next morning and did not cry on the keys because the organs have opinions. We met with a mediator 2 weeks later and realized we'd both been good at being kind and bad at telling the truth when it first knocked. The Meridian still needed its pianos. I showed up. Leela still made rooms behave like manners. She showed up. We were polite to each other at work and honest elsewhere. It's a weird grace, the way a marriage can end without anyone being the villain you swore you avoid. Isla arrived in my life the way a new key arrives on an old map, quietly with the promise of better routes. She isn't a pianist. She's a hotel florist, the kind who believes lilies are shouty and peonies are gossip. The first time I saw her, she was elbow-deep in water coaxing stubborn stems to forgive their travel. The ballroom smelled like green rain. Which one hates the spotlight? I asked, leaning on a case. Ranunculus, she said without looking up. They want attention without responsibility, like tenors. Then she glanced at the Steinway, the Yamaha, at me with my lever, my notebook, my posture, and said, "You make them tell the truth, don't you?" "I ask nicely until I don't," I said. She smiled with half her mouth. "Me too." We practiced not hurrying. I'd finish after a rehearsal and find her in the service corridor building a bouquet that could seduce a room without flirting. We'd share coffee leaning against a crate and talk about our parents like we were comparing recipes. Once, after the last guest had gone and the lighting had been turned to, we did our best. She walked me to the stage and set a single stem on the high C, its petals shivering with the tiny hum that lives in every string after a long night. "What's it saying?" she asked. "That I tuned it for a different evening," I said, "and that's okay." We didn't crash into each other. We arrived. Our first kiss happened in the Meridian's greenhouse storage, surrounded by buckets and a ragtag kingdom of leaves. It was nothing YouTube would demonetize. No grabbing, no panting, just the press of two people who had learned from other lives to be careful with what they wanted. Her hand found the back of my neck. My palm found the curve of her waist where the apron tie cut a line. It felt like finding the exact pressure, where a stubborn string finally lets go and hums. When Leela and I signed the papers, she wore the blazer I loved and the earrings that try to look casual and fail. We walked out of the courthouse into a noon that aimed to be kind. We stood there for a minute, two people who had built a house they couldn't live in anymore, and she said, "You'll be happy, Elliot." "You too," I said. "Play it hard if it's the right song." She laughed. We hugged. The world didn't end. I still carry my canvas bag and my notebook. The Meridian still calls. Sometimes I hear the conductor's rehearsals from the hallway and the notes don't make me flinch. He's good, in the way men who own their appetites are good at being heard. Leela's name appears in press releases with front of house glory. We nod in passing, and it isn't cold. At night, in my apartment that learned a new acoustic when half the furniture left, I keep a small upright by the window that looks over a corner store and 3 trees that pretend they're a park. Isla comes by after late setups. She kicks off her shoes and sits on the bench sideways with her knee against my thigh. We drink mint tea because mint forgives everything. Sometimes she leans her head on my shoulder while I test a chord at whisper volume, and we both smile when it lands in the pocket where truth isn't cruel. It's just well lit. I still believe in leaving one note just a hair imperfect so a room doesn't lie to you. That's not revenge. That's mercy. You learn to recognize a heart that needs a quarter turn. You turn. You listen. You stop when it's enough. The night I tuned the wrong key, I thought I'd broken something I couldn't fix. Turns out I hadn't. I'd only tuned for the scene we were pretending to be in, instead of the one we were brave enough to play.